Hello and welcome back to the channel where we are building a video game from scratch using Love2d and Lua. Now I think last time, I think I overwhelmed myself a bit with the saving and loading because we're trying to save the inventory and load it, which I just got stumped on last time. So I'm gonna take a little break away from that and try to see if I can get the soundtrack imported into the game and trimmed and looping and all of that goodness, because we still need that. We haven't done any of that yet, and I think I need a little bit of a break from the saving and loading just because it's been difficult. Okay, so we will try to do this. See, yeah, all of this debug is for trying to figure out how the saving and loading was broken. So we will come back to that, but I'm going to try to import a soundtrack for the music that I made for the game. So we have a sound table here, a global sound table, and we want like we can call it OST, an original soundtrack. We can give it keys. We can say, I'm going to put in a title track. You know, maybe all the OSTs are tracks, right? So we're going to have the title track, and we're also going to have other tracks, like we have the dungeon track. And then we have one more, and it's like we can call it it's gonna play when you're in the overworld, like what could we call it? Explore track, I don't know. I think of exploring when I think of hearing that one, kind of. So, all right. So we will import these. Now the thing is, I don't have these. I have a recorded synth.aif that we have to trim into looping songs so that we can import them into our game here. So I have those right here. I created these on the OP1 synthesizer. So I need to trim these AIFs into MP3s and import them into the game. So let's get doing that. We can use Audition. So one thing to play with is going to be the bit depth of the MP3s we export, because we don't want the huge files, right? Because we still want it to be kind of like a Game Boy game. So we don't want like these huge files, and on the GitHub repo we don't want huge files to store and pull. So maybe, I don't know, we'll have to play with the exports. Here we go. We'll have to see if we can get it looping good, right? And then, so side A, this is the recorded, here, let's mute the music here. Okay, so this is title screen. Okay, so since it's not like a perfect loop, because let's see. Okay, how do we loop this thing? Yeah. We've got to do something a little better than this. So let's do. Yeah, we'll do a multi-track session here. Okay, let's try this again. Okay, so it looks like our sample rate's 44.1 kilohertz. So let's just make sure our project sample rate is the same. I don't even know how to do that. I think it's right when we make it. Yeah, right here. Okay. So if we do it in this multi-track session, what we can do is perfectly splice it and like crossfade it a bit, and then export a perfectly looped fade transition so that it doesn't sound so abrupt to loop, you know? So we kind of have to get the timing just right. Okay. So that's about it. But we want it, yeah, we want to kind of fade it. It might be an actual effect, but I mean, that's already better. It's a little off. Yeah. We just need a better fade here. You know, it's like even if we didn't fade, but let that one kind of play out. Okay. Oh, I'm hearing this click, whatever that click is. Oh yeah, that's better. That's better. I think that's it. There we go. Okay, so the tricky thing with this is the loop we need to export. So we need to include this tail end right here. We need to just start the clip here and go all the way up until this matching endpoint, which is a little tough because it's like this is the same beginning, but this beginning doesn't have the transition for this. So I guess what we can do is cut. How do we cut? We want the blade tool. R for razor instead of B for blade like in Premiere, you know. Okay. Okay, so we basically need to cut that. And then we need to replace the top track with the bottom track and then sync that second chunk with the first part. So we need to replace this with this. But keep the end. So we need to scoot the end over to the beginning. Okay, we also need to cut, wherever this is cut, we need to end it. Oh, crap. Okay, yeah, we see we need to splice it right here. Because this is already in the beginning of its own track. It's how we loop it. Okay. Oh my god. Okay. We've got that. And then we need to splice out this. Okay. Okay, see how here how that looped? It sounded maybe a little off. Huh? I think that's okay. Okay, so this is like the looping export, right? So let's export this in WAV, and then we can worry about the compression and see how it sounds after, you know, we convert it from a WAV. So we'll save this. I don't want to save it in the repo just yet. So let's save it. Yeah, let's save it just here. I do want to make a folder because this is title screen, title track, we call it. But I want it in a new folder. Okay, yep. It'll be WAV, 32-bit float. That's overkill, but that's what the project's in. So let's just title track mix down export. Did it happen already? Yeah, it happened already. Okay. So it looks like, so like let's check this out, because like now we want a normalization pass, right? So that all of them are sounding equally loud so that we can have like one sort of system to adjust loudness. We put it here in Tashio OST mixdown. So I'm just going to pin this. Okay. So the 32-bit float version of the track, which is way overkill. It's 8 megabytes. It's 8 megabytes, and I think the repo itself is like 6 megabytes. So this is bigger than the entire game so far. So just adding the title screen song in this state would double our memory of the entire source code. So yeah, we do want to export this as an MP3 compressed. So let's see what that sounds like. We'll go, yeah, export file. And instead of WAV, we want compressed audio. We'll try MP3. Sample rate, same sample rate. We don't care about 32-bit depth. So let's try 16 bits of depth and here. we'll keep it the same sample rate, but we can change the bit rate to be less too. I don't know what would sound, I don't know what the difference of lowering the bit rate versus lowering the bit depth. So let's try a high bit rate first and see what the 16-bit depth sounds like and what the file size is. It looks like estimated file size half a megabyte, which is like a 16th of the original size. So let's try this. Let's just give it some metadata where we say that this is 16-bit but high bit rate, which is 192 kilobits per second. Constant bit rate, yeah. So that looks like, yeah. So this was a WAV file, and we exported it as a compressed MP3. We didn't normalize it, but I'm just trying to see what the difference in the sound is, and then we can worry about that. So here we should have, I should have put it in the same folder. Let's do this. (16-bit, 192 kilobits), yes, but we'll save it in the folder that we're doing all this stuff in, Mixdown. And then it is 16-bit, 192 kilobits per second. MP3. Compressed. We'll see the file size difference here. Look at that, 500 kilobytes versus 8 megabytes. So yeah, very much smaller, but let's hear how it sounds. It sounds good. I think we could crush it a bit in terms of bit rate, but like let's hear what the same bit rate but at a lower bit depth sounds like. So I'm kind of curious how much it breaks apart. So if we change this into only 8 bits depth but keep the same bit rate, I mean, I don't think it'll sound good at all, but I'm curious. So it's 8-bit depth, 192 kilobits per second. Let's try that. Oh my gosh, it sounds like rain almost. Let's open this in the project and see if that's noise that we can reduce or what's going on with that, because it almost gets away with it. Ideally, I want these as small as possible, so we don't bloat the source code file size with one commit here. So 8-bit, let's see. Why does it sound so staticky at 8 bits? I don't think noise reduction is the way to approach that. I think 16 bits might be where it's at. Well, let's see, just to see what the file size difference is. It's not even, it's the same bit rate. It's the same bit rate. So, yeah, even at a good bit rate, 8-bit sounds terrible. Which is to be expected, I guess. But let's see how far we can crush the bit rate to shrink the file size with it still sounding good at 16 bits. So we'll go back to 16 bits and we'll change the bit rate. Let's see if we can get away. Let's see if 96 is completely terrible. So this is 16-bit, and it is 96 kilobits per second. So it should be half the file size of the one we just did. Okay, 196 kilobits, yeah. It sounds like ocean or, you know, static. Like, let's try this again. We might, oh, you know what? We might have exported that from the already compressed one, because we should have exported it from here. Let's try that. Yeah, we just want to... Let's try this again. Okay, yeah. Oh, this is okay. Yeah, wow, 96 can work. Yeah, let's see if we can go lower, because that sounds much better than I thought. Let's see the file size on that. 200 kilobytes. Now we're talking. So yeah, we cut it in more than half. I think we can push it a little further. Let's try to normalize this just a bit. Now we can do this amplitude statistics and get the perceived loudness. Negative 14 is probably too high, so want like negative 16, yeah, something like that. Okay, let's try this. (16-bit), 96. Let's see if we can go down to 80. Constant bitrate, same folder. What's it yelling at me here for? MP3 audio format does not support the sample type. Oh. Oh. Do we just change that then? Yeah, 24. Okay, it is. Okay, there we go. So this is going to be title track mixdown, and it is 80 kilobits per second at 16-bit depth. What the hell just happened? (16-bit depth). We'll change this to the 22. Why is it fine with this now? Okay. This one's got to sound terrible, right? Let's do bitrate first. So it is 80 kilobits. And it is 16-bit depth. MP3. Okay, yep. And we saved it from the WAV file, so that should be right. Let's hear how this one sounds. 80 kilobits. Let's hear this. It's not bad. I can't believe 80 kilobits can work, huh? Yeah, I mean, 80 isn't too small, and we're down to 243 kilobytes file size versus a 290. Yeah, I mean, I probably don't see any reason to go lower, but I'm just curious what happens if we go lower. So let's see. So let's try a 48 kilobits and just jump to 48 and hear how it sounds. And we'll just know that we're at 16 bits still. Yeah, 48 kilobits. Let's see. It doesn't sound awful. It does not sound awful, and that is 140 kilobytes versus our 290. So yeah, we cut it. Oh wow, we cut it a lot. 149 kilobytes. That's not bad for one song, because right, we have multiple soundtracks. So that's why I want to get a standard for compressing so that it's a manageable file size. And so far 48 actually sounds better than I thought. Let's see what 32 sounds like just to try. I mean, it is from a synthesizer, right? So it's not like a real instrument, a real analog instrument. You know, I don't hate it. I don't hate it at 32. 100 kilobytes. 100 kilobytes. Dude, yeah. Oh my gosh. I mean, I just want to see what it sounds like when we crush it even more. So that was at 30. Let's try 16. Let's just see. Half the file size of what we just listened to. It has to convert down to 8,000 sample rate too. "16 kilobits. It's 55 kilobytes. I don't hate it. I don't hate it. It sounds like a little bit muffled, but I don't hate it. That's as low as we can go. Yo, Kavictus, what up? I'm just testing the compression rate. 16 kilobit. Like, we started out with like, how much was the wave? The wave file was 8 megabytes. 8 megabytes for the wave file of a 23-second song, and we just compressed it down into a 16 kilobits per second, which is 55 kilobytes from an 8 megabyte starting size. I don't hate the 16 kilobit version. You definitely hear a bit more fidelity in the 32 kilobits. Let's try the 80. Yeah, even more. Well, I think there's a sweet spot to be had. Like, I think maybe 32. Let's see. I don't know. I think the move might be to have the repo, the GitHub repo, have the 16 kilobits version, and then if when we ship the game we want, 64 kilobits or something, we can easily export those again, because we have the title track mixdown, the wave file, so we can always recompress it. But for the GitHub repo, this being 55 kilobytes, I think is really attractive. So I think we'll move forward with the 16 kilobits normalized version. So we normalize to 16 LUFS. LUFS. So negative 16 LUFS. So if all of our tracks are about negative 16 LUFS, they'll be about the same perceived loudness. So if we've got our title track now, we have to export the next song, which we already have this. We should be able to get rid of this. Okay. So let's do side B, which this is the dungeon. Okay, so this is dungeon music. So let's pull this in to our multi-track and let's just hear it. Okay. We could even just normalize it now if we wanted to. Oh, we can't. Not in a project. Okay. Yo, Cavictus, no worries, dude. Yo, thanks for stopping by, man. Yo, have a good night. Dude, so I'm like what I do for a living is I run a video production company, so I do video editing and audio editing and stuff. Um so I always felt that on one hand programming video games is like the complete opposite of doing video production, but so much of video production kind of falls into game development too, you know? So I mean in a weird way, right? It's like all you're looking at is moving images, right? And there's sound that accompanies it. So I'm kind of just doing what I normally do, just in a different medium. I think we might not need a fade or anything on this one. We might be able to just get away with like a straight loop. Jimmy's light just turned off. Yeah, sleepy time for well, actually it's awake time when the yeah, she's nocturnal, so she'll start to wake up, but since this light is on, she probably isn't so she isn't probably going to be active. I mean, it's not that bright. It's not that bright. She'll probably start waking up and start moving around now. Yeah, Jimmy's a girl. I named Jimmy before I could tell. That's good. That's good. That's a good loop. I think we don't even have to do a fade or anything. It looks like as long as this starts at the same position. So let's make sure the starting point is flush with the end there. Let's see. Oh my god. Dude. Looks a little different. Yeah, it is different. Okay. Oh, okay. Both wait, they're both named Omaroka? That dude, that's wild. I've never heard of that. Why are they both? They got the same name. You just call them both. You call them both Omaroka. Dude, this is nuts. Okay. So if this, okay, that looks about sync. So we had trimmed that song to make it loop right, so the beginning was off. But now that should be right. So now let's just hear, oops, let's hear what it sounds like when this is looped. Oh, okay. You don't, okay. Not both at the same time. I thought you had like only two cats and they're both the same name. Okay, no, that makes sense. That makes sense. Oh, Stargate. Dude, I haven't thought of Stargate in forever. Okay. It did sound fine. The loop sounded fine. Nice. Okay, cool. So the loop's here. So let's export this master mixdown for a 32-bit float wave. Okay, so wave, we can save it as, I mean, 32-bit float's definitely overkill, but yo, hey, take care, Cavictus. Thanks for hanging, dude. Okay, this is dungeon track. Okay, and this is OST mixdown. Yeah, this is the wave file. Okay, so now if we open this wave file, dungeon track wave. Now we can export to our standard, which is 16-bit depth and normalized to negative 16 LUFS. Yeah. Negative 19, negative 15, negative 17, 16. Okay. That's so loud. Okay. I wonder how that one's going to sound crushed down even further. I mean, it is kind of like sine wavy, so it might not sound bad at 16 kilobits. Let's try it. MP3, we'll say 16 kilobits, 16-bit depth, 24,000 hertz. Sounds right. Oh, 16, not 40. Yep. Okay, so 16-bit depth gets chopped to 24,000 kilohertz or 24 kilohertz. Okay. It's going to make us convert to 8,000. Okay. So now the dungeon track 16 kilobits. This one, the 16 kilobits one we liked for the repo is actually the title track. And then 16 kilobits and the dungeon track. So let's hear how the dungeon track sounds. The loop didn't sound great, but I think that might be just VLC. Now, I don't know. I'm kind of wanting to just export the 32-bit for that one, just because I feel like it might, or the 32 kilobit version. Sounds weird. Let's see, 16 kilobit, that's a longer song, but the 16 kilobit version is still 149 kilobytes. That's pretty good. Yeah, it's pretty good. Because it'd be nice if all the tracks like didn't amount to more than a gig in the repo. That would be nice, just to try to keep it down. Because this was like, this was a minute 12. So we have one more track. I don't know if I'm going to use the 32 or the 16. That's already 300. Oh, this is kilobytes. This isn't even megabytes. So yeah, under a megabyte for the songs. Yeah. Oh man. Oh, we're good. Yeah, because this is kilobytes. Oh yeah. Okay, that's better. I don't think I really like how that one sounds better though. Let's keep with the 16. I think it'll work. Okay. Now we have track 4 at about 2 minutes in, right there. So let's add this to the multi-track mix down. Okay, about 2 minutes in. That is not the one, dude. That is not the one. I think that was for a Brightside challenge. 2 minutes in. There we go. That's what I want. That's the one I want. Okay, let's try it again. 2 minutes in. Okay. Thought it looked awfully short. Okay, this is it. I think we can shorten this a bit. That sounds good. Okay, we'll export our master. .32-bit float wave file mixdown in our folder called mixdown. I think I call this Explorer track. .wave. Okay, let's do our conversion. So we will have our we just open it here. We just say this explore track wave. We're just going to normalize this. $16, there we go. Okay, so we're going to do 16-bit depth, and we're going to go all the way down to 16 kilobits, and we're going to say 16 kilobits in the export. 100 kilobytes, down to 8,000 hertz sample rate. Let's hear what it sounds in 16 kilobits. I flubbed it there. Okay. I mean, I can loop it and fix the flub, but I'm going to leave it in just because that's how I recorded it. So whatever, we'll just we'll move forward with that. I mean, we can always remix it. You know, the original game might have higher bit depth or bit rate exports. We want explore track 16 kilobits. We want dungeon track, and we want title track 16 kilobits. So we'll copy all these and we'll add them to our repo in our music. And we have, we need to name these. So it looks like we're getting away with 3 imported songs, and it looks like it's only 300 kilobytes. So a third of a megabyte. That's not bad. So we'll call this, we'll just name it camel case like we normally do. Title track, dungeon track, and explore track. See, I am totally fine committing files this size to the Git repo. We can always replace for higher fidelity if we want. Yeah, I'll be right back. We got title track, dungeon track, explore track. So now we can finish the stubbing out we did over here. So love dot audio dot new source, and we'll give it the file that we just exported for title track, which is music slash title track dot mp3 as a static file. And then we need, basically we can do this a little easier. So we have title track, we have dungeon track, mp3 looks right. Yeah. Why is the coloring wrong on this? Dude. Okay, we got to put this in parentheses. Apostrophe. There we go. There we go. Okay, so we have a table called OST. OST is a global table, has different keys like title track, dungeon track, explore track. So this will be our music system for the sounds. So one thing that we did was we changed over to using the Slam library instead of the default Love2d audio library. And we did that because Slam allows us, by default, Love2d doesn't allow you to play a sound until that sound has finished playing. So if you wanted to play two sounds in quick succession, like strumming a lute over and over and over again, without the sound needing to end before you play another sound, I needed the Slam library. So that works great for lute music, but not so great for overworld music, because now if we just say play title track, it'll play the song title track every single frame and let it play out every single instance. So we'd get 60 versions of the song playing every second. Every second we would get that. And they would play out. So it sounds like a crazy nasty mess using the Slam library. But we need the Slam library for lute stuff. So we kind of have to figure out a workaround to get the soundtrack playing only one at a time. So it's like we need like an active soundtrack that gets a string, which is the key to the OST at index, whatever the key is. So we need to be able to play it, and then we need to only play it if the song is the active track and it's not already playing. So I don't exactly know how we'll do it, but let's try to, since we default the game in title state, let's go to the title state and try to play title track and hear how awful it is with that infinite 60 times per second playing, you know? So just to prove how bad that sounds. So let's go title screen state. Okay, so we will say, just in the title screen state, we're going to go to our OST table. We're going to go to the index of title track. And we will try to just play it. Now this, since this is updating with delta time, 60 times a second, it'll play this song. So it'll sound terrible. See? So we need something else. We need to say like, and I don't know know if there are methods. Let's see, instead of playing, let's just see OST. Oh my gosh, dude. Okay, title track. And is playing. Look at this. Our LSP is helping. Is playing. Returns true if at least a single source instance. So it's going to look at that key, look at that new sound file, see if it is playing. So we can say if not playing, we want to play it. So if not playing, play it. So by default, it is not playing. So we'll play it, then it'll be playing. Then the next frame, it is playing so that it'll just pass this whatever. But we also, we probably want to pull this out. We might want to pull this out into our main function. And we can just ask the state from that point. Because it'd be nice if we had it all in main. But let's just see if this works. Does it play? Nice. Oh, hell yeah, dude. Okay, let's hear for the loop. Let's hear. You can hear it. You can hear a loop. I mean, if that's as good as it gets, you know. So we're still playing it because we're in the title screen state. So or because the instance was playing. So what we'd have to do, and this is why I think, yeah, this is why we put it in the main instead. So let's go back to our title screen state. We don't want this here, but we do want to add where we declare this sound table and our dependencies, this OST table. We're also going to have a active soundtrack. So I'm just going to say soundtrack gets empty string. Now this is a global variable initialized to an empty string. So we can say in whatever title state, whenever we change to a title state, that state will overwrite the soundtrack to be the string of the key that relates to the proper soundtrack in our OST table. So we initialize as an empty string, and what we're going to do is just go to our title screen state. Now, I guess we can do it in update. It's kind of messy. Let's just do it in the init. And we'll just say soundtrack gets, and this will be title track. Okay? And then we want the same thing, but for our play state. So we're going to go into our play state and try to put into our init. Where is our init? Right here. We're going to say soundtrack is title, not title track. This is explore track. And actually, this is, oh man, this is actually not great. Yeah, this isn't great because our play state, we don't want our play state to trigger this. We want to trigger this when we switch to the overworld, which I don't know. I guess for now, if the play state, because the other track is the dungeon, so that would technically be in the play state. So we need to only assign this to be the explore track when it's not a dungeon scene. So we'd have to do that upon a warp zone. For now, let's leave. Oh, you see, it's yeah, it wouldn't be in play state, but it could be any time we default to, we can do it from the title screen. Say, okay, if we're in the title screen going to the play state, then we do want to change the string. So let's say by the time we change into a play state, we do want this soundtrack to be the Explorer soundtrack. And then we want to overwrite it if we're in the dungeon at that point. So it's like if we continue it from a start, it should do the play state. And do we ever have another play state change here? Don't think so. Okay. So we should at least have title track to explore track. Let's put it... Gosh, can we just put it in our main, I guess? I just want to render a test, and it'll be a print of this string global soundtrack. We'll put it at 0, 0. Might have to set color to white. Okay. So we'll put it there. Let's see. Okay, title track. Okay, great. And then we're going to go into overworld track, explore track. Explore track. Great. And then let's see if we die. I mean, we got way too much health to test that out. Okay, whatever. Anytime we're in title screen state, it inits the title screen state. So let's just go to our player real quick, and we'll try. In our health, I'm just gonna say we want 1. We just want to test if we can go back to the title track global variable upon a death, because that's kind of how we did it. Why do we have so much health? Health is 1. I don't know why we have so much health. Let's just lose all our hearts. Oh my gosh. That's a lot of deaths. Okay, here we go. We're in explore track. We're going to die. Still explore track. We need like a game over soundtrack so it doesn't play the well, I guess it could play the dungeon music here. Let's try to quit. Title track. Okay, cool. Okay, so we might need to change whenever we go to a player falling chasm state. We might need to change the soundtrack global variable to be equal to a nothing string. But we'd have to catch an empty string in the main if we choose to add it there. So let's see. Okay, so what I want to do, oh my gosh, dude, this, okay. Yeah, where do we say we have another health somewhere? Original health? Nope. Okay. Okay. So we have our global, let's try to add this to main here. So in main, we want to ask about our state machine. No, we want to ask about this global variable. So we're going to just say if soundtrack is equal to the title track, then we want to go into our OST table at index title track. And we want to say play. But we don't want to just play every 60 times a second. We only want to play it if it's not already playing. So if not OST title track, and then so we say title track, and then is playing, if it's not is playing, then we want to play our title track. Yes, yes. Okay. So if we're on the title track and it's not already playing, play it. Then we can say else if this is our explore track, then we want to play our explore track. So let's see. Let's see. We didn't do our nested loop here. Or not even nested loop, it's just a condition check. If not is playing, that's when we want to play the explore track. Let's see. So now this isn't tied to the play state because the play state also encompasses when we're in the dungeon. So we need to be able to switch it to a dungeon soundtrack, so it can't be tethered to the play state. And also it's kind of in main outside of everything, so I think it's a little cleaner that way. Okay, we also need to stop playing previous songs. So I think there's, you know, we need a stop all. Is there a stop all? I don't know if there's a stop all. Because basically we need to pause the track. And we could, oh, and you know what? We would do it. I don't think we want to do it. I don't think we want to stop the sound when we switch over because there's so many options to switch over. Like if we die, we switch to a chasm state. If we continue, we go to a title screen state. And there's all these times where you'd have to remember to stop the music. Otherwise, we have two songs playing at once. So I think it's better to... We can ask... if right here, we just want to say... I don't know if we can just hit stop or what on title track. I don't know. So we're going to stop the title track and play the explore track. Let's see. Seemed to work. Okay, but we need the dungeon soundtrack. So now we have a warp zone, but not every warp zone is a dungeon track. So we don't assign explore track except for hitting enter on a title screen. So it's almost like, yeah, it's almost like we need a... I don't know. I think all we need is like a dungeon boolean. And when we warp zone, how would we do this? We could just... Crap, dude. I don't know how to do this. Because like we don't have any boolean that says like, hey, we're in a dungeon right now. We have a warp zone that can teleport us across the map to the other world, so we could. But then there's some stuff like the opening cinematic that is in the other world where the dungeons are, but also isn't a dungeon, so shouldn't have the dungeon music. So I think in our warp zone update, when we go to, crap, dude. I don't know how to do it. In our warp zone update, we can just say, because there's two scenes. Actually, there's 4 scenes we can warp into that just have the dungeon music. There's both entrances of both dungeons and both exits of both dungeons. So that'd be 4 scenes that we'd have to add, 4 warp zones, that we could add the dungeon track play to. So I think it makes most sense to tie it to the warp zone and tie it to like an option of some sort. So like maybe let's see where we do warp zones, right? We got warp zones right here. We cycle through our warp zones that we have. If we're colliding with a warp zone, then we're going to go do the old thing. Okay, so this is like, yeah, we collide with a warp zone. Okay, so when we do this, this is how we do it only once, right? Only if we're not warping do we become warping. So here we can ask, now we have a dot warp zone object that we're using to check collision force. So we should be able to say if the warp zone we're colliding with has a field that says dungeon, which we'd have to add, then we can set our soundtrack to the dungeon track at this point in time. So we could say that this is dungeon track. And that would overwrite the soundtrack file. And then if our soundtrack file is dungeon track, which we can do in our main, at the end of our update in main, we say otherwise, if our soundtrack's equal to dungeon track, then we want to do 2 things. We want to check if the dungeon track is already playing, because we don't want to play it more than once. We want to play the dungeon track so we can actually hear it if it's not playing. And we want to stop the explore track from playing because we just came in from outside. So that's in our main. Now that won't quite fix it. What happened there, man? There we go. Okay. Okay, so what this is missing is a dungeon option, because just because we're warping doesn't mean we want to play the dungeon soundtrack. Only if we're warping into a dungeon do we want to play it, because here any warp zone should trigger the dungeon track, and I guess we can just test it and see. Nice. Okay. See, and we're just always changing to dungeon track once we change to dungeon track at any given time. So we need to go. Man, the console's really killing me. Okay, so yeah, this is where we need either dungeon true or whatever in our. See, we don't want to do this. We want to say this V collides, V in pairs of warp zones. We'd want to see if the V dot dungeon is true. If it is a dungeon, then we want to assign the soundtrack to be dungeon track. If it is not a dungeon, we probably want to warp. Well, we probably need another soundtrack for like indoor stuff. Yeah, we probably need one more soundtrack that I haven't made yet. So I think I do want like an indoor kind of neutral music. It should sound different than the Explore. So I'll think about what I can do for that. But for now, if it's a dungeon, soundtrack is here. We can say otherwise. Soundtrack's just going to get Explore for now. But it could be either a dungeon or an inside or whatever we happen to call indoors. So this v.dungeon doesn't exist. This .dungeon field on our warp zone class objects doesn't exist. So we need to make sure to add them. And we'll say v.dungeon. Yeah, we've got to go to our actual warp zone objects. Okay. Now we need a default dungeon option. And it'll be whatever we pass in as parameter. And if we don't pass in dungeon, it'll be false. So this needs to take in an optional parameter of dungeon. And it'll just be a bool, true or false. So we have an XY, player X, player Y, warp row, warp call, a disjoint, a state change, in option, which I'm not even sure what option does. Option is probably the string of either dungeon or inside. I don't think we're using a warp zone option anymore. But let's see. We initialize warp zone objects at the beginning in map declarations. When we do our insert warp zone function, that also just inserts warp zones into the .warp zones table of every field, of every scene. So we have a .dungeon, so we just need to be able to pass in a parameter to the insert warp zone to carry over, right? So if we look at where we kind of declare this insert warp zone function, we do it here. So now this option, we have this option side. So what if we also include an optional dungeon parameter, and it'll say, you know, we don't want it's not that. Oh man, dude. Okay. Yeah. We basically want to do what we do, but if there is a dungeon. So if dungeon is true, if we pass in a true boolean as an option on the last parameter there, then we want to do a thing where we go into, now it has to be the warp zone we're going to, right? Yeah, because if the warp zone we're going to has a dungeon, this is hard, man. Because yeah, warp zones work both ways. So when do we check for the dungeon option here? In warp zones, it's going to be the warp zones of the current map that we're cycling through to check if it's a dungeon. So this isn't quite right, because what we're doing is we're cycling through, oh my gosh, dude. We're cycling through the warp zones on our current map, but in order to know if dungeon needs to be triggered, we're kind of going about it where we're saying, well, if when we insert this warp zone, we go into, oh man, dude. Because yeah, if there's ever a scene with more than one warp zone, I don't think this method will work. But I don't think there is a scene with more than one warp zone. Shoot. Okay, this isn't quite it. but I don't know how to do it better. I mean, we could just give the scene a boolean of dungeon or not when we initialize all the map declarations, and we can just ask about the current scenes dot dungeon field and change the soundtrack based on that. That would probably be easiest, but then we'd have to manually kind of say all these files are specifically a dungeon. All these scenes, you know, so the one dungeon, because I like the warp zone approach, because until we warp out of the dungeon, it won't play the normal song. So I kind of like that approach, but this is crazy because we're doing the collision check. Yeah, I think because we still need we need a way to be able to say, is the place we're warping to a dungeon? And it's not just like yeah, I think we have to kind of go into it's tough because we're like so many levels displaced of the actual warp zones, because we're using this insert warp zone function that takes in multiple warp zones to add the teleport to and teleport back in the appropriate scenes. But we basically need to say, when we go to insert a warp zone, a two-way warp zone to a dungeon, then we know we need to change the soundtrack. Well, shoot, man. I'm gonna have to think on this one a bit. I think the move is, because yeah, it'd be nice if, you know, when we add a two-way warp zone, we just run one function. So if that one function had, okay, this is a dungeon, then we just need to know, since most warp zones or all warp zones are a warp from the overworld into the dungeon, then all we need to do is go into our scenes dot, you know, and then we need to give every scene a dungeon option and give it set the soundtrack based on the dungeon option of not the warp zone, but the scene, the current scene we're warping to. So I think we need to do something like that, but at least we got the sounds, the new soundtracks in the game, but we do need to worry about normalization in the game, so it's not too loud, but I'm not too worried about that right now. But let's say that we add 3 music tracks to OST. Okay, get push. Okay, so I will also work on trying to make one more track for indoor NPC houses stuff. So like the refinery, or even Mage's Library maybe, or the inn, or the fisherman's hut. So we need another soundtrack for indoors like that. So something kind of neutral. So we'll get to doing that. Let's run credits here and we'll call it a night. Tomorrow is what, Saturday? Yeah, I'll be back. I'll be back tomorrow with more programming and hopefully finish the demo this month. We've got like 1 week to finish the demo. We're really close. We just got a couple more save data debug bugs to fix, and then a couple new sprites for the overworld. Rough Cookie's on. We're gonna raid Rough Cookie. Anyways, thanks for watching. I'll be back tomorrow. Have a good night.